3rd of May 1955. A week-long festival at New York's Museum of Modern Art opened with the debut film of one Satyajit Ray. Pother Panchali, a Bengali film from India, and that too without subtitles. But the American audience sat up, moved by the film's neo-realism and breathtaking photography. Pother Panchali went on to become an all-time masterpiece, winning many awards along the way. Films were being made in India long before an ad industry person decided to make Pother Panchali. But that was truly a turning point of Indian cinema because it made the world sit up and take note. In the slightly more than 50 years since then, Indian cinema has changed drastically. This is the centennial year of purely Indian cinema, and we take this opportunity of looking at some of the turning points that changed, crafted, and influenced the medium. Indian cinema in the last 100 years has also become truly global in its reach. It has found a ready market in over 90 countries across the globe, countries where movies from India are regularly screened. And Indian movie superstars are known faces across large chunks of the world. In 1955, Satyajit Ray might have made the world aware of the existence of Indian cinema, but it had already been in existence for close to half a century before that. Raja Harishchandra was the first silent feature film produced by an Indian without any foreign collaboration. The film was released on 3rd of May 1913 in Bombay. Dhundiraj Govind Phalke, also known as Dadasaheb Phalke, was the first foreign-returned Indian cine technician who learned filmmaking in England. He not only produced Raja Harishchandra, but became the first director, writer, cameraman, makeup man, editor, art director, and cine laboratorian. Raja Harishchandra was based on a story from Mahabharata, and the first heroine was not a woman but a young boy, Salunke, who acted as Taramati. Raja Harishchandra. This silent movie marked the birth of the Indian film industry 100 years ago. The first decade witnessed the first female heroine. Studios got set up and soon began churning out films in Calcutta and Madras. Censor boards came into existence by 1920. Governments began levying entertainment tax on tickets to the bioscope. But the nascent industry was at a disadvantage when it came to competing with cinema from the West. In the 1920s, Hollywood was also expanding its base, and 85% of feature films shown in India were American. Indian cinema was crying for its own voice, and the introduction of sound had an immediate impact. 14th of March, 1931, Majestic Cinema in Bombay. The first Indian talkie, Alamara, produced by the Imperial Film Company and directed by Ardeshwari Rani, was released. The talkie brought about revolutionary changes to the industry. The most significant one was the segregation of the movie market on the basis of language for the first time. It was natural that moviegoers would want to watch films which they understood. Films that were made in their own language. And so began a surge for regional language cinema. The talkies also brought in songs and heroes and heroines dancing to the tunes. The more the merrier. For more than 75 years now, song and dance routines have been an integral part of commercial Indian cinema. As the country marched towards independence, there were social upheavals taking place, and filmmakers of the 1930s and 40s could not ignore this churning. Thought-provoking, socially relevant cinema began to be made. Marathi director V. Shantaram led the charge for socially relevant cinema. But cinematically, the most important film of the era was possibly Devdas.
क्या तुम शराब पियोगे?
शराब जरूर पीऊंगा। वाह रे मेरे हमदर्द, वाह वाह वाह।
A tale of love and frustration created the tragic hero. Played to perfection by Dilip Kumar in Bimal Roy's Devdas in 1955.
और मत पियो देवदास।
क्यों?
कुछ ही दिन हुए पीना शुरू की है, इतनी ज्यादा बर्दाश्त नहीं कर सकूंगी।
कौन कमबख्त है जो बर्दाश्त करने के लिए पीता है? मैं तो पीता हूं कि बस सांस ले सकूं।
Tamil cinema gained national recognition with the costume extravaganza Chandralekha, directed by S.S. Vasan for Gemini Studios. In 1937, Indians saw color for the first time on celluloid. Kishan Kanya used color techniques developed in India only. Later in 1953, Sohrab Modi shot India's first Technicolor film, Jhansi Ki Rani. The Minerva Movietone production was the first technically perfect Technicolor film directly shot on 35mm. The first International Film Festival held in Bombay in 1952 made Indian filmmakers aware of the latest techniques of cinema. A year later, film magazine Filmfare introduced the Filmfare Awards, acknowledging the best and the brightest of Indian cinema. Over the past 6 decades, filmmakers and actors and technicians have competed to win a Filmfare Award. But in the year it began, the award for the best film went to Bimal Roy's Do Bigha Zameen. A major portion of Do Bigha Zameen was set in the backdrop of Calcutta, a city that by the early 1950s had become a center for cinematic advancement. If Bimal Roy and his new theatre experimented with neorealism, Satyajit Ray depicted the reality of Bengal. And Ritwik Ghatak was exposing the darkness that tormented the Bengali in the context of a divided land.
দাদা, তুই একটা চাকরি করিস না কেন বলতো?
ও শিল্পীর চাকরি করা সাজে না। আর 2 বছর পরে একেবারে এই ছাপ্পাড় ফেড়ে টাকা পড়বে।
In Hindi cinema, the impact of neorealism was evident. Raj Kapoor's film reflected a passionate concern for questions of social justice. High on melodrama, his movies captured the imagination of the audiences. Guru Dutt's classic Pyasa and then Kagaz Ki Phool took filmmaking to a different league. Kagaz Ki Phool, released in 1959, brought CinemaScope to the Indian screen. Then came Mehboob Khan's epic, Mother India. The trials and tribulations of a poverty-stricken woman, played by Nargis, ranks among the all-time Indian blockbuster, and perhaps India's most revered film. The film was India's entry for the Academy Award for the Best Foreign Language Film in 1958 and was chosen as one of the 5 nominations in that category.
बिरजू, मैं बेटा दे सकती हूँ, लाज नहीं दे सकती।
तुम मार सकती है तो मार, मैं भी अपनी कसम नहीं तोड़ूंगा।
मौत मोहब्बत से करीब हो गई, ऐसा ही होगा।
अगर ऐसा न हुआ तो सलीम तुझे मरने नहीं देगा और हम अनारकली तुझे जीने नहीं देंगे।
1960 saw the release of the eternal love story of Bollywood, Mughal-e-Azam. The historical epic went on to become the biggest grossing film of its times, a record that went unbroken for 15 long years. To groom a new set of Indian filmmakers, the Film and Television Institute of India was established at Pune in 1959. 2 years later, the Film Finance Corporation was set up to support new filmmakers. The new wave cinema came back with new vigor. It all started with the release of Mrinal Sen's Bhuvan Shom in 1969. It was also around this time that the new crop of graduates from FTII, as well as a few experimental filmmakers, boosted the production of small-budget films. And the state chipped in with sponsorships and co-production deals. This new art house movement continued in full spirit through the 1970s and 80s. Some of the films from this era turned the way cinema would be made in India. But even before art house cinema was to take off, the swinging 60s had made its presence felt in India too. Popular cinema threw up new stars like Shammi Kapoor, who strummed on guitars a la Elvis of Hollywood. But Rajesh Khanna brought in the era of the soft, sentimental, romantic hero and became the dominant heartthrob of Hindi cinema.
पुष्पा मुझसे ये आंसू नहीं देखे जाते. I hate tears.
Kishore Kumar's electric voice played its part in making him a superstar. Over the years, many heroines had also made their mark in Bollywood with their beauty and grace and their acting talents. But it took them some time to be labelled bold along with beautiful. This turning point came in 1967, and it was brought about by someone from the Tagore family of Bengal. In an evening in Paris, Sharmila Tagore wore a bikini, the first Indian woman to do so in films. It not only shocked the conservative Indian audiences, but also set the stage for other bikini-clad actresses to follow.
बड़ी घबराहट होने लगी।
मगर क्यों होने लगी थी घबराहट?
Dimple Kapadia wore a two-piece in Raj Kapoor's Bobby. The movie became one of the biggest hits of its times. Bobby marked the coming of age of the Indian heroine. No longer was she afraid to be termed sexy. Zeenat Aman and Parveen Babi became the sex symbols of Bollywood. If the heroines became sexy, the men became angry.
यही है वो इलाका जहाँ लोग तुम्हें जानते हैं.
The political and economic turmoil of the 70s got reflected in the cinema of the times, and it threw up one of the biggest character makeovers of all times. Amitabh Bachchan turned into an angry young man on screen, and so was born a superstar.
जाओ पहले उस आदमी का साइन लेकर आओ जिसने मेरे हाथ पे ये लिख दिया था. उसके बाद मेरे भाई तुम जिस कागज पे कहोगे मैं उस पर साइन कर दूंगा.
Even as Amitabh Bachchan was turning into the biggest star of Bollywood, one of his iconic films was itself creating history. Not only did Sholay, released in 1975, forever etch Jay, Viru, Dhanno and Gabbar in our minds, it awed with its technological advancements as well. Sholay was India's first film with a stereophonic soundtrack, and all the action took place on 70mm widescreen projection. But if Sholay had to be remembered for one thing only, then it had to be this scene.
छह गोली और आदमी थी. बहुत बेइंसाफी है ये. अब ठीक है. होता की ताकी रे सबसे तू आंखों में झांकी.
The early 1980s was a lean period for scene changers in Bollywood cinema. Not much was happening in terms of innovation or turning points. Cinema had become a formula, and formula was making money. So no one bothered to change popular cinema. That is, till QSQT came out. The release of Qayamat Se Qayamat Tak in 1988 did two things. One, it revived the musical love story in Hindi cinema. And two, it introduced Aamir Khan, the first of the Khan trio, to the audiences. A year later, in 1989, it was the turn of Salman Khan to make his debut as a romantic hero.
मेरे रंग में रंगने वाली परी हो या परियों की रानी या हो मेरी प्रेम कहानी.
एक लड़का लड़की कभी दोस्त नहीं होते. ये तो एक पर्दा है, पर्दा.
It would still take 20 more years for Salman Khan to build his muscles and be the dabang. But in the early 1990s, he was a hit as the cute lover boy who lived next door. The last Khan to make his debut was Shah Rukh. And though his first film released in 1992, it was Dilwale Dulhania Le Jayenge, which can be marked as the turning point when this Khan began his meteoric rise towards superstardom. But even as the Khans began rising, Bollywood came in for some stiff competition. The invasion of satellite television, the opening up of the economy, and blatant piracy threw up new challenges. Producers had to innovate to survive. Someone had to figure out new ways of bringing the audience back to the theatres. In the South, filmmakers who had been experimenting with new technology and new forms of storytelling now began working in Bollywood. And that provided the fresh beginning that Hindi cinema so needed. Ram Gopal Verma introduced the use of Steadicam and Shiva. Mani Ratnam concentrated on the mounting of his canvas. Color and framing were details that set his films apart. And Mani Ratnam Films also brought a slew of southern acting talent right into Bollywood. Roja introduced the Hindi cinema goer to the talent of A.R. Rahman, and he soon became a Bollywood fixture, working with some of the biggest names in the industry. What began with Roja reached its zenith when A.R. Rahman created a Jai Ho moment for Indian cinema, when his music for Slumdog Millionaire won not one, but 2 Academy Awards.
A.R. Rahman and Gulzar for Jai Ho from Slumdog Millionaire.
Well, let's leave it there, at the Jai Ho moment. Because these were but some of the turning points that influenced cinema in India. The list is nowhere near comprehensive, nor do we claim that these were the biggest turning points. We just thought we would relive some cinematic moments from the past 100 years and share them with you. We hope you enjoyed it. Thank you and goodbye.